Hi everyone, so the following clips are taken from Lex Friedman podcast. You can find the links of that in the description. I have made a specific playlist of the podcast that I preferred and I listen and from which I have taken these clips. You can find the link of those in description or somewhere around. I have no rights over it. I hope it does not copyright it and all. It is just for my memory. It is like a notes for me. So that's all it is. I hope you enjoy it if you are listening to it. If you want a proper talk on the things, if any of the points, you can like see the name in the video and go to that specific podcast and listen to the complete podcast. I recommend it if you want to talk about. Like, I'm listening it, so obviously I'm recommending. I don't waste my time around. Similar podcast script compilation notes is uploaded on various other channels of my own, depending on respective persona field. So if you want, you can check them out. These all are just my preferred topics and stuff to talk about. You can go and listen to the full podcast. Thank you. Have a good day. I hope you enjoy the clip.
You might be asking, why talk to physicists if you're interested in AI? To me, creating artificial intelligence systems requires more than Python and deep learning. It requires that we return to exploring the fundamental nature of the universe and the human mind. And it was an interesting question of what it takes to create a really hard question for humans, because you again have to do the same process as you mentioned, which is something basically where the experience that you have likely to have encountered throughout your whole life, even if you've prepared for IQ tests, which is a big challenge, that this will still be novel for you.
Yeah, I mean, novelty is a requirement. You should not be able to practice for the questions that you're going to be tested on. That's important. Because otherwise, what you're doing is not exhibiting intelligence. What you're doing is just retrieving what you've been exposed before. It's the same thing as a deep learning model. If you train a deep learning model on all the possible answers, then it will ace your test. In the same way that a stupid student can still ace the test if they cram for it. They memorize 100 different possible mock exams, and then they hope that the actual exam will be a very simple interpolation of the mock exams. And that student could just be a deep learning model at that point. But you can actually do that without any understanding of the material. And in fact, many students pass their exams in exactly this way.
Right.
And if you want to avoid that, you need an exam that's unlike anything they've seen, that really probes their understanding.
You almost make it sound like there's a meaning to it all. Let me ask the big, ridiculous question. What do you think is the meaning of life? Or maybe the easier version of that is what brings your life joy?
So I'll just answer that one personally. For me, I'm a little bit weird. I sort of, I guess you can tell by now. But,
see the pen and pencil discussion from earlier, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, my thing is, I guess I personally just wanted to maximize a certain score, which was for how many person years after I'm no longer here anymore, did what I do mattered.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter if it's necessarily attributed to me. It's just like, did it matter?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I wanted. I guess that is very inspired by how scientists work.
So we started to think about consciousness as potentially needing some of the same, not mystical, but some of the same magic.
You see, it is a complicated story. So people think, oh, I'm drifting away from the point or something. No. But I think it is a complicated story. So what I'm trying to say, I mean, I try to put it in a nutshell. It's not so easy. I'm trying to say that whatever consciousness is, it's not a computation.
Yes.
Or it's not a physical process which can be described by computation.
This was called the Orchestrated Objective Reduction idea, or OR, which is a biological philosophy of mind that postulates that consciousness originates at the quantum level inside neurons. So that has to do with your search for where Where is it coming from? So that's counter to the notion that consciousness might arise from the computation performed by the synapses.
Yes, I think the key point. See, sometimes people say it's because it's quantum mechanical. It's not just that. See, it's more outrageous than that.
So our theories of quantum mechanics may be missing the same element that the universal Turing machine is missing about consciousness.
Yes. Yeah, this is the view I held, is that you need a theory, and that what people call the reduction of the state or the collapse of the wave function, which you have to have, otherwise quantum mechanics doesn't relate to the world we see. To make it relate to the world we see, you've got to break the Schrödinger equation.
From. And one of the things in the Soviet Union that was highly prized is knowledge, not even knowledge, it's wisdom and the skill of invention, of innovation at a young age. So we're not talking about a selection process where you pick the best students in the school to do the mathematics or to read literature. It's like everybody did it. Everybody, it was almost treated as if anyone could be the next Einstein, anybody could be the next, Hemingway, James Joyce. And so you're forcing an education on the populace and a rigorous, deep education. The Russian system was anyone can be the strongest student, and we're going to teach you the strongest student, and we're going to pretend or force everybody, even the weakest student, to be strong. And what that results in, it's obviously, this is what people talk about, is a huge amount of pressure. Like it's psychologically very difficult. This is why people struggle when they go to MIT. This very competitive environment. It can be very psychologically difficult. But at the same time, it's bringing out the best out of people. And that mathematics was certainly one of those things. Mathematics, especially this kind of mathematics, is essentially formalized competition of invention, of creating new ideas, and that generalizes really, really well. So that's quite brilliantly put. I didn't really think about that. So this is not just about the competition. This is about developing minds that will come to do some incredible stuff in the future. Is there advice you can give to young folks? We give a bunch of advice on middle school, high school mathematics. Is there more general advice you would give about how to succeed in life, how to learn for high school students, for college students, and so on? Career or life in general?
So I think the first one would be to make sure that you're learning to invent, and to make sure you're not just learning how to mimic. Because a lot of times you learn how to do X by watching somebody do X and then repeating X many times with different inputs. Mm-hmm. I'm just being very generic in explaining this. But I guess this is just my own attitude towards the world. I didn't like ever following anyone's directions exactly. Even if you told me this is the way to do your homework, is to write in pencil, I would say, but I think pen is nice. Let's try, right? So I've been that kind of a funny person. But I do encourage that if you can learn how to invent as your core skill, then you can do a lot. But then the second piece that comes with that is something I learned from my PhD advisor, which was, well, make sure that what you're working on is big enough. And so in that sense, I usually advise to people, once they have learned how to invent, ideally, don't just try to settle for something comfortable. Try to see if you can aim for something which is hard, which might involve a campaign, which might be important, which might make a difference. And it's more of, I guess, rather than worrying, what if you didn't achieve that? There's also the regret of, what if I didn't try? You see, that's how I operate. I don't operate based on, did I succeed or fail? It was hard anyway. If I did this Novid thing and the whole thing failed, would I feel terrible? No, it's a very hard problem. But would I have had the regret of not jumping in? Yes. So it's that different mentality of don't worry about the failing part as much of the make sure you give yourself the shot at those potentially unbounded opportunities. And I found out I was very bad at reading math textbooks. a math textbook has a long page of stuff that is all true, which after you read the page, you have no idea what you just read.
Yeah.
This is just
a good summary of a math textbook.
Okay. Yeah, because it's not clear why anything was done that way.
Yeah.
And yes, everything is true, but how the heck did anyone think of that? So the way that I taught myself math eventually was, the way I read a math textbook is I would look at the theorem statement, I would look at the length of the proof, and then I would close the book and attempt to reprove it myself.
Yeah.
Now,
That's brilliant.
the length of the proof is telling you the number of insights, because the length of the proof is linear in the number of insights. Each insight takes space.
Yeah.
And if I know that it's a short proof, I know that there's only one insight. So when I'm doing my own way of solving the problem, finding the proof, I quit if I have to do too many pluggings. It's equivalent to a math contest. In a math contest, I look, is it problem 1, 2, or 3? That tells me how many insights there are. This is exactly what I did.
That's brilliant. I find that we know so little about intelligence that I honestly think like almost children are more expert at creating artificial intelligence systems than adults. I feel like we know so little. We really need to think outside the box. And those little, I found people should check out Francois Chollet's little exams. But even just solving math problems, I don't know if you've ever done this for yourself, but when you solve a math problem, you kind of then trace back and try to figure out, where did that idea come from? Like, what was I visualizing in my head? How did I start visualizing it that way? Why did I start rotating that cube in my head in that way? Like, what is that? If I were to try to build a program that does that, where did that come from?
So this is interesting. So I try to do this to teach middle school students how to learn how to create and think and invent. And the way I do it is there are these math competition problems, and I'm working in collaboration with the people who run those, and I will turn on my YouTube live and for the first time look at those questions and live solve them. The reason I do this is to let the middle school students and the high school students and the adults, whoever wants to watch, just see what exactly goes on through someone's head as they go and attempt to invent what they need to do to solve the question. So I've actually thought about that. I think that, first of all, as a teacher, I think about that because whenever I want to explain to a student how to do something, I want to explain how it made sense, why it's intuitive to do the following things, and why the wrong things are wrong. Not just why this one short, fast way, why this is the right way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So my point is, I'm actually always thinking about that. Like, how would you think about these things? And then I eventually decided the easiest way to expose this would just be to go live on YouTube and just say, I've never seen any of these questions before. Here we go.
Don't you get, man, that's anxiety inducing for me. Don't you get trapped in a kind of like little dead ends of confusion, even on middle school problems?
Yes, that's what the comments are for. The live comments come in and students say, try this.
Oh, wow.
It's actually pretty good. And I'll never get stuck. I mean, I'm willing to go on camera and say, guess what, Po Shen Lo can't do this one. That's fine. But then what ends up happening is you will then see how maybe somebody's saying something and I look at the chat and I say, aha, that actually looks useful. Now that also shows how not all suggestions are the same power, if that makes sense. Because if I actually do get stuck, I'll go fishing through the chat. Anyone got any ideas?